I've gone through a couple of really tough years. In the winter of 2013, I had a nervous breakdown. I couldn't find any joy in my job. I was struggling every day with finding joy. Then in early 2014, my brother was told he needed a double lung transplant or he was going to die. He spent 4 months waiting for a transplant, and during that time, I left my job I had been at for 13 years because I was no longer happy there. I was so concerned that I was going to lose my baby brother. Didn't want to get out of bed. When I did get out of bed, I went to the hospital and spent hours and hours with him. And then even after he did get his transplant in June of last year, it was still, every day was a struggle. Every day he could die. And my husband was always there. He was always holding my hand and saying, "It's going to be all right. What can we do to make life better for you?" And late in the summer, my husband started complaining that he wasn't feeling well. He had a struggle to breathe. Every step was an effort. And I kept begging him to go to the hospital, go to the doctor. He kept putting it off and saying, "I'm okay, let's focus on these other things right now, and I'll go in a couple of weeks. If it gets bad, I'll go." During this time, I had been sporadically attending church at Grace Christian, and there was an advertisement that I saw for the event, and it sounded like a great place to go, just spend an evening. I invited my daughter to join me. I knew that a lot of my girlfriends were all going to be there. Late in the evening, they did a program, and ladies that go to the church started speaking. And they each went up on the stage and they told their stories. And I started listening to their stories, and so many of their stories were like mine. And they told their stories of what happened to them after they found God and the happiness they'd found. And I knew that I wanted that same joy. At the end of the program, I was standing there, just tears pouring and just overwhelmed by emotion. And I was just suddenly surrounded by a group of women. We prayed and we talked, and it was the happiest day of my life. When I left the church that night, I called my husband because my husband talked me home every time I went somewhere. I said, "I was saved tonight. I'm God's child." And he started crying and he said, "This is the most wonderful news you've ever given me. I'm so happy for you." And I got home and we talked and we cried together for hours. And over the next couple of weeks, he called everybody he knew. And he said, "The most wonderful thing has happened to Linda. You're not going to believe what's happened to her. She's found God." And my life started changing almost immediately. I found a really good job. The people I work with, they care about each other, and they welcomed me in with open arms. I'd only been there a few weeks. My husband finally decided to go to the doctor. Over the course of about a month, we found out he had cancer in his lungs, and it had metastasized to his brain. So the doctors told us he probably had about 14 months, even if we didn't do anything. My husband passed away on the first day of January of this year. He was so upbeat every day. He said, "God's going to get me through this. God has a plan." I feel like God had come into my life right before all this happened, because he knew I was going to need him so much. I needed God in my life because I was about to go through the hardest time I've ever gone through. Even with all the struggles before, earlier in the year, there was so much more to come. When my husband passed away, 2 days later, 11 of my closest friends showed up at my house and brought me dinner, and we just sat around the dining room table and just talked all night. And they just knew that was what I needed at that time, was just those ladies, those women in my life that are so strong, that bring me strength. My brother is doing exceptionally well with his new lungs, and he's there constantly looking after me. I did lose my husband, but I did get to keep my baby brother, and that is one huge positive thing. I miss my husband terribly, but I know he's with God. I know he is in a really happy place, and someday I'm going to be there with him. And I'm going to be there with him because I found God.